who was a former government employee, and that fugitive was David Allen Peritano. Mr. Peritano's background is particularly important to us because he actually worked for the Calhoun County Jail many years ago as a corrections officer. He went and worked for another government agency in a non-law enforcement function. But Peritano was married. We are reluctant to talk about victims. It's unavoidable in this case, but his wife had a child from a previous marriage. And when she was 15, she had a baby. That victim is now 30 years of age. And it never came to light, the relationship between Mr. Peritano and his victim, until the victim's child, who is now 15 years old, became a victim herself. And in our investigation of that case, the disclosure was made who the father of this child allegedly was. And thanks to DNA testing, we were able to confirm the fact that David Peritano is the father of this 15-year-old child. Mr. Peritano, when he became aware that the investigation, the finger of guilt, was pointing in his direction, he fled. He didn't go to the next county, he didn't go to the next state. He got on a plane and went to Germany. And from there, he disappeared. Thanks to some help from a gentleman in Croatia, we learned where Mr. Peritano was. Mr. Peritano, in his time there, he stayed at essentially what you would call a bed and breakfast hotel that they cater to folks who ride bicycles, tourism there. But he didn't have a bicycle, and he showed up out of the blue, and he stayed there for a while, and he began to have a relationship, conversations with the owner of the business, and the owner also was hired by Mr. Peritano to transport him to various places, including crossing their border. As that relationship grew, Mr. Peritano apparently liked to brag, and he simply informed the gentleman there that he was wanted in the U.S. And they went to a border crossing. The gentleman in Croatia steered him to a busier crossing where there were a little more resources there, and he gave the border guard his passport, his own passport, and he had a note in there saying essentially, hey, this guy with me, he's wanted. And they checked, and there was a confirmation that he was wanted in the United States, and they took him into custody. Now, I have with me today the U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Alabama, Marty Keeley, and his Chief Deputy, Cliff LaBarge. And I would like for them to talk about how this process works and their relationship with local law enforcement and the ways that they help us. We also have Randy Moeller from the Calhoun-Cleveland District Attorney's Office, and the issue of what kind of charges Peritano has and the prosecution of those and other questions you may be interested in. I would refer them to him. But again, I go back to what I started out with today, is the partnerships that we have with other law enforcement agencies matter, and they allow us to do our job very well. So I would ask Marshal Keeley if you would come forward and talk about how we retrieve these guys from other countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. With me today is Chief LaBarge from the U.S. Marshal Service. In this particular case, back in October of 2015, the Sheriff requested our assistance in locating this individual. As the Sheriff said, we've got an outstanding working relationship with the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office. Members of this department are associated and work with our Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force. And this task force is organized to help locate state and local fugitives who have fled the area, and in this case, fled the country. It's not unusual for the Marshal Service to work overseas or out of the country, and once we got the request for assistance from the sheriff, we contacted our international branch, and in turn that branch got with Interpol, and there was a red notice that was at that time registered with Interpol that this individual was wanted by the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office, and the sheriff gave you the background information on how the individual was ultimately apprehended. It's not unusual for the Marshal Service to be involved, again, in international cases. It's not unusual at all for the Marshal Service to go overseas and to assist with the extradition and bring an individual back to this country. And that's exactly what happened in this case. You had two Deputy United States Marshals along with the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office Task Force deputy, who the three individuals went to Croatia, picked this gentleman up and brought him back to the Calhoun County Jail. Chief, you want to add?
No, I think we covered.
Okay.
Would you touch on the task force and how we work together, Marshal?
Yeah, the task force came into existence in 2006. And again, it came into existence through a law, which was the 2000 Presidential Protection Threat Act. And what that act did, it authorized the Attorney General of the United States, and it designated the Marshal Service as the lead agency, and it gave the Marshal Service the power to go out and work with state and local agencies, police chiefs and sheriffs from around the country, and in particular in this area, this task force, the Gulf Coast Task Force, covers the state of Alabama, the state of Mississippi, the city of Memphis, Tennessee, and the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And so the way this works, the way the partnership works is with the sheriff, police chiefs, and others, they will assign a deputy or two, in this case two deputies, to our task force. They're deputized once they arrive, and they're trained by our people in the U.S. Marshal Service methods. And once deputized, they have full federal arrest power in terms of where they can go, and their jurisdiction is expanded because of that outside of the state of Alabama. So it's proved to be, over time, a wonderful partnership, and the Marshal Service arrests over 100,000 violent fugitives a year working through these task forces with our state and local partners. In addition to the task force, we have a great partnership and relationship with the sheriff here in that he houses federal prisoners for us. The U.S. Marshal Service is responsible for holding and housing all federal prisoners who are unable to make bond and who are awaiting their day in court. And we do that by contracting with county jails to house the prisoners for us. And they're actually transported to the particular venue, the courthouse where their case is being held, be it in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, or Huntsville, or one of the other courthouses in the area. And then they stay with us during the day, and at the end of the day, the sheriff would come with his deputies and pick up these folks and bring them back. So it's a wonderful relationship for us also to have that partnership, and we frankly couldn't do our job without the help of the sheriff and others.
Can you touch more on the, I noticed that you have the wife and the mother, the stepdaughter, she was charged. Can you speak more to, why she was charged and kind of her role in hindering prosecution?
Yeah, I'd look to the sheriff for that. I think that would be something the sheriff would probably be better to address. You want to answer that question, Sheriff?
Certainly. I was taking this in portions, but as part of our investigation, let me mention again in the way of partnerships, here in Calhoun County, we have the Calhoun Cleveland Children's Center, whose duty is to investigate allegations of physical or sexual abuse against children. I've served as president of that board a number of times, and I'm on that board, and we do almost right at 400 cases a year from this county. And that's a sad thing, but I think we're proud of the thing for us to be proud of. If somebody says something to us about a child being abused physically or sexually, we follow up, we do something. So we have an investigator assigned there full-time, Rachel Israel, and Rachel was working a case involving allegations of abuse of this 15-year-old child. As that investigation went forward, the information came to light that the stepfather, Peritano, had abused us, and that was back in June of last year. Interesting thing, Mr. Peritano, he came home and told his wife, said, you know, I quit my job, I'm leaving here, take me to the Atlanta airport. And she initially just didn't have any information about why he was doing that, and she took him to Atlanta and he left the country. And we got a report from the victim and the other information I've already talked to you about. And then we learned and confirmed that Peritano had in fact gone to Frankfurt, Germany on June 25th, 2015. And we later obtained a warrant for him in August 2015 with a $100,000 cash bond. And the U.S. Marshals adopted the case. But as we continue this investigation and continue communication with Mr. Peritano's wife, she just had no information about any of this. She didn't understand what was going on, where he was, or what was happening. But as we went on, we learned, as we made the arrest of Peritano, that she had in fact been sending him money. And she knew exactly where he was, and that she obviously had some significant information about this case, and she was helping him avoid arrest on this case. A warrant was obtained, and she was charged with hindering prosecution, and she made bond on that charge. I'd like to have Randy Moeller with the District Attorney's Office step forward, and Moeller helps us obviously prosecute these cases and screen them, and talk to us a little bit about the prosecution side, Randy.
Thank you, Sheriff. Randy Moeller, M-O-E-L-L-E-R. I'm an assistant DA here in the Calhoun and Cleveland County Circuit. I'd like to say that while the facts of this case, as the Sheriff relayed to you, are in fact incredible, the fact of the working together of all the different agencies is not surprising to us at all. It's something that we've seen before. We've worked with the federal marshals before, always with good success. And the dedication and the hard work that our local law enforcement put into this case is not surprising. That's what we've come to expect under the leadership of Sheriff Anderson. In this case in particular, as the Sheriff explained to you, Ms. Peritano is charged with hindering prosecution. We have an hindering first-degree charge pending against her. Mr. Peritano himself is charged with rape first degree, in particular, a person being 16 years of age or older, having sexual intercourse with a person or a female under the age of 12 years. Do I have any questions? No?
Well, I think you or the sheriff one can answer this. Sometimes when a suspect disappears into the other side of the world, some of those cases can become enacted pretty quickly. Is this something y'all would have kept looking at if y'all hadn't gotten a break in the case?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Dixon. I'm sorry.
Would this have become an inactive cold case had y'all not gotten a break from Croatia?
I understand what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, the case would have remained pending. We knew that he was not in the U.S. We knew he was overseas somewhere. We did not know in particular where he was. So the case would have remained active. The warrant would have remained active until he was found and brought to justice.
How long ago was it that he was picked up at the border?
It's something that the sheriff will have to answer. I can't answer really any particulars as to the facts of this case, since we'll be prosecuting the case and we don't want to get facts out from our office.
Do we have a preliminary court date yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And he hasn't been extradited back, I would assume.
Oh, he's here.
Oh, he's here. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
I guess we can safely say that he's not going to have a very low bond.
I think the sheriff said it has a $100,000 cash bond. It's pretty substantial.
And what was the bond amount for the wife?
I don't know that, I'm sorry.
Come on.
If you give me a few seconds, I can look it
It's
up.
okay.
We have it, $7,500.
All right. Thank you.
So question was asked about him being arrested. It was on January the 10th that he was detained at a border crossing in Croatia. One other element to this case is we mentioned that Mr. Peritano liked to talk. I don't think he was always honest and accurate, but in his conversations with the gentleman in Croatia, he also said that he wanted to go to Syria to take part in the war there, and that he had crossed the border a number of times out of Croatia, and those crossings were allegedly to meet with an operative from Turkey that was supposed to help him cross from Croatia to Turkey to ultimately to Syria, where he was going to fight with the Syrian rebels. That's what he said. We don't have any information to confirm that, but the gentleman who assisted us obviously has been accurate in the information he had. So we know that Mr. Peritano crossed the border a number of times for some purpose. And I'm not really sure what his goal was, but I can only assume that it wasn't good. So we are really interested in what all he's said or done. Obviously, it's an international thing, not anything we're dealing with here at this stage, but if it was determined that he went to fight in somebody else's war, then the U.S. State Department would probably be interested in that ultimately. So we don't know the facts yet. We are not certain of where that actually stands, but we wanted to pass that along to you as well, because this case is very unusual.
Now, in the preliminary stages of this, from what you know thus far, has the FBI or the state been interested, even though I'm sure you have to confirm a lot of that stuff?
Well, I will tell you that our investigator has been in communication with the FBI in regard to this case. So they are aware, they have what information we have, and they're doing their job.
Do you know his last known address?
Peritano, I think he was in rural Calhoun County on East Glen. Did he live at the dead end of East Glen Drive in Alexandria? Last address that I'm aware of in the U.S.
What's the border crossing that we went to, is crossing Croatia with what other country?
Not sure. We know, I mean,
He went to several different countries. He went to Italy at a time or two. I think he crossed the total number of 5 times. Once he crossed the border into the next country, where he went from there, we don't know.
The place where he was picked up was the border with what country? Croatia. Don't know.
I'm not sure, and Rachel's not here. She's been the investigating person on this, but we'll get you that information, what we have.
15-year-old with a relative?
Yes. The DHR case, and they've made what they call a safety plan, and they have placed the other children from the home in a place of safety.
Sheriff, once again, can you remind me what Mr. Peritano was doing for a living when he left Calhoun County?
Well, he was working for a governmental agency. I think he's involved with litter and garbage issues. for
When you
another
said the
government.
agency.
It was really close to your Calhoun County Commission.
How long had he been a jailer here in Calhoun County, and when was that?
When I took office in '95, he was employed here at the jail, and he stayed a couple of years after that where he left taking this other employment.
Okay, but you're ever sure when he left?
I don't have that date, no.
You have a clean record when you left there? Were there any incidences of,
He was not terminated, he left to take other employment. I'll tell you that. I think, again, I've said this before, but I really want to emphasize that we have a children's center that investigates these cases against children. You can see the long-term ramifications, because one of the things we know from child abuse cases, very often the victim in those cases either becomes an abuser themselves, or they perpetuate that cycle where somebody else becomes a victim. But in our Children's Center, one of the things that we work hard on is to do counseling with the victims and try to break that cycle, because it's so important, because it just continues from generation to generation. And it is our goal, and the folks that have been up here with me, I can assure you, it's everyone's goal that we see Mr. Caratano in the courtroom and he receives what is a fair and just penalty against him in a court of law. And that on the questions about, you asked Dixon, those cases, if there's a warrant been obtained, it wouldn't be a cold case status, but it would be one that we stay involved in. And I know that in the international community, when as they mentioned about a red flag, once they're flagged, that stays there. I'm not aware of a end date on that. Like our warrants, they don't go away.
Now, the victim, the stepdaughter, I'm not sure if you've been able to speak to her in your investigation, but what's the morale like, kind of, with what happened and now that an arrest has been made? Have you been able to have conversations with her? What's that been like?
Our investigators have been in contact with them. I would just say two things. One, you just have to imagine what it would be that your father is a child. I mean, your parent is the father of your child, and for that to become public knowledge, it's got to be devastating. And you can imagine that the emotional situation for them, as well as when her own child has become a victim, this is a very difficult time for them. And it's a very difficult thing to sit up here and talk about. I'm really not happy to do that part of it, but I think in this case, people need to know. People need to understand the cost on these cases, and our goal of staying after these particular kinds of cases. And I really want to thank the district attorney's office. They assigned the DA to work with us on these cases, and they pursue them. And often the victim is not able to do a good job. If your victim's a 3-year-old child or a 2-year-old or a 5 or 6-year-old, and you want them to testify against somebody they love, it's a really tough place to be. And we need to do everything we can as a society to do something about these. Other questions?
Where was Mrs. Piratano arrested? Was she arrested by Calhoun County?
Yes, she was here.
And where in the county was she arrested at?
I assume we got her at her residence. I'll find that out, confirm that for you, but I believe that's correct. Other questions? All right. I want to thank y'all for coming out, and again, I want to thank our partners that made this case possible. It got accomplished so we can reach back in the past and find someone who did such a horrible thing and pursue them to the other side of the world. Thank you.
Before we get wrapped up, can we get the names and the positions of the two gentlemen with the Marshal Service?
Certainly.
Thanks.